The contract, the rain hammered against the windows of Cross Technologies like bullets against glass. Each drop echoed the desperation that filled the boardroom where Valentina Cross sat in the corner, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Watching her father pace back and forth like a caged animal, the 25-year-old had seen Richard Cross weather many storms in his 15 years of running the tech company. But never like this. "The banks won't extend the loan," Richard muttered, his voice cracking with exhaustion. 3 generations of Cross, family legacy, and it's all going to crumble because of one bad investment. Valentina's heart clenched as she watched the man who had once seemed invincible crumble before her eyes. Cross Technologies had been her grandfather's dream, passed down through the family like a sacred torch. Now that torch was about to be extinguished, taking with it not just their livelihood, but the college fund for her younger brother James, who was studying engineering in London. "There has to be another way, Dad," Valentina said softly, though even she could hear the doubt in her own voice. They had explored every option over the past 6 months. Every bank, every investor, every possible partnership had been pursued and rejected. Richard stopped pacing and looked at his daughter with eyes that held a mixture of love and something that looked dangerously close to calculation. "Actually," he said slowly, "there might be one option left." The way he said it made Valentina's stomach drop. She had learned to read her father's expressions over the years. This one spoke of desperate measures and moral compromises. "What kind of option?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Before Richard could respond, the boardroom door opened with a soft click that somehow managed to sound ominous. Victoria Sterling, Richard's longtime business partner, entered with her usual predatory grace. The 40-something woman had always made Valentina uncomfortable with her calculating smile and the way she seemed to evaluate everyone like they were potential assets or liabilities. "Richard," Victoria said, her voice smooth as silk, "I've just gotten off the phone with Blackwood Industries. Damian Blackwood is willing to meet with us tomorrow."
Valentina
felt the blood drain from her face. Everyone in the business world knew about Damian Blackwood. At 32, he had built an empire that spanned technology, real estate, and finance. He was known for his ruthless business tactics and his complete lack of sentiment when it came to deals. People called him the Ice King of Wall Street, and not because of his platinum blonde hair. "What would Damian Blackwood want with a failing company like ours?" Valentina asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. Victoria's smile turned sharp. "Not the company, dear. You." The words hit Valentina like a physical blow. She shot to her feet, chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me?" Richard couldn't meet her eyes. "Valentina, just hear us out. Hear you out." Rose with disbelief and growing anger. "You're talking about selling me like I'm some kind of commodity?" "It's not like that," Richard said, quickly finally looking at her. "Would be a business arrangement, a marriage contract. Again. Damian gets the social respectability that comes with a wife from an established family, and we get the financial backing to save the company." Valentina stared at her father as if she'd never seen him before. "A marriage contract? Dad, this isn't the 1800s. You can't just arrange marriages for business deals." Victoria stepped forward, her expression deceptively sympathetic. "Valentina, I know this sounds archaic, but it's more common than you might think in our circles. It would be a mutually beneficial arrangement with clear terms and boundaries." "Mutually beneficial for everyone except me," Valentina snapped. "What do I get out of this besides being tied to a man I've never even met?" "You get to save your family's legacy," Richard said quietly. "You get to ensure James can finish his education. You get to preserve everything your grandfather built." The guilt hit Valentina like a wave. She thought of James, so passionate about his studies, so proud to be carrying on the family tradition in engineering. She thought of her grandfather's portrait hanging in the lobby. The man who had started with nothing and built an empire through sheer determination and innovation. "There has to be another way," she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew there wasn't. They had exhausted every other option. "The arrangement would be for 5 years," Victoria continued, sensing Valentina's wavering resolve. "After that, you're free to divorce with a very generous settlement. Damian is a busy man. He travels frequently for business. You'd have plenty of freedom to pursue your own interests. Valentina closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her family's expectations and her own sense of duty crushing down on her. When she opened them again, her father was watching her with a mixture of hope and shame that broke her heart. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "The meeting is tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Victoria said. "At Blackwood Tower, top floor." That night, Valentina sat on the roof of their family home, looking out over the city lights that twinkled like stars. Against the dark sky, this house had been in the Cross family for 3 generations. Every room held memories of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family dinners where her grandfather would tell stories about the early days of the company. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. "How are things going with the company situation?" "I've been worried sick." Valentina stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Everything's going to be fine. Focus on your studies." She couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. Not yet. Living arrangements the next afternoon. Valentina found herself standing outside Blackwood Tower, a gleaming monument to corporate success that seemed to scrape the very sky. She wore her best black suit armor for the battle ahead, though she wasn't sure if she was the warrior or the prize being fought over. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like an eternity. Victoria had accompanied her, offering what she probably thought were reassuring smiles, while Richard had stayed behind, claiming he couldn't bear to watch his daughter be negotiated over like a business asset. The elevator doors opened to reveal an office that looked more like a modern art museum than a workplace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while sleek furniture and abstract sculptures created an atmosphere of cold sophistication. And there, standing with his back to them as he gazed out at the city below, was Damian Blackwood himself. He turned when they entered, and Valentina felt her breath catch. She had seen photos of him in business magazines, but they hadn't captured the full impact of his presence. He was tall, easily 6'3", with platinum blonde hair perfectly styled and ice-blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. His charcoal suit was obviously custom-tailored, fitting his athletic frame like it had been painted on. "Miss Cross," he said, his voice deep and controlled. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile, barely acknowledged Victoria's presence. "Please, sit." Valentina remained standing, chin raised defiantly. "I prefer to stand." "Thank you." Something flickered in those ice-blue eyes, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. Most people probably did exactly what Damian Blackwood told them to do. "Very well," he said, moving to stand behind his massive desk. "I assume Victoria has explained." "The terms of the arrangement?" "The arrangement," Valentina repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "Is that what we're calling it?" Damian's expression didn't change, but she caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "I don't believe in sugarcoating business deals, Ms. Cross. This is a contract, nothing more. You marry me, appear at necessary social functions, and in return, your family's company receives the financial backing it needs to survive." "And what do you get out of this?" Valentina asked, crossing her arms. "Respectability," he said bluntly. "My company is expanding into new markets that value traditional family structures. A wife from an established family opens doors that money alone cannot." His honesty was brutal, but Valentina found herself almost respecting it. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was, a business transaction. "The contract would be for 5 years, Damian continued, pulling out a thick folder. "You would live in my penthouse, but maintain your own space. No interference in each other's personal lives, no expectations of intimacy. After 5 years, we divorce amicably, and you receive a settlement of $50 million. $50 million. Enough to ensure she never had to worry about money again. Enough to start her own life completely free of obligations." "Want to see the contract?" she said. Damian slid the folder across the desk. Valentina spent the next hour reading through every clause, every condition, every escape route. It was thorough, she had to admit. Both parties' rights and responsibilities were clearly defined. There were even clauses about public behavior, social media presence, and grounds for early termination. "This clause here," she said, pointing to a section near the end. It says the contract can be terminated early if either party violates the terms. What constitutes a violation? Anything that brings public scandal or embarrassment to either party, Damian replied. Adultery, criminal behavior, public intoxication, that sort of thing. Valentina nodded, then looked up at him. I have some conditions of my own. Damian raised an eyebrow, such as, I want my brother's education fully funded through his PhD, if he chooses to pursue it. I want to guarantee that Cross Technologies will remain under my family's control, with you as a silent partner only. I want the right to pursue my own career interests without interference. Done, Damian said without hesitation. His quick agreement surprised her. She had expected to have to fight for every concession. Is there anything else? Valentina looked at this man who was about to become her husband in name, if not in reality. Just one thing. I don't want any pretense between us. This is a business deal. I won't pretend to love you, and I don't expect you to pretend to love me. Perfect, Damian said, and for the first time, she saw what might have been approval in his expression. I prefer honesty in all my dealings. 3 weeks later, Valentina stood in the bridal suite of the city's most exclusive hotel, staring at herself in the mirror. The wedding dress was beautiful. Victoria had insisted on designer everything for the sake of appearances, but it felt like a costume for a role she never auditioned for. You look beautiful, sweetheart, Richard said. From behind her, his voice thick with emotion and guilt. Do I? Valentina asked, not really expecting an answer. She looked like a bride, certainly, but she didn't feel like one. She felt like an actress about to give the performance of her life. The ceremony was a blur of faces she didn't recognize. Reporters capturing every moment for the society pages, and vows that felt like they were spoken by someone else. Damian looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, playing his part perfectly as the devoted groom. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch was surprisingly warm, though his expression remained coolly professional.
Ow.
You may kiss the bride, the officiant announced. Damian leaned in, his hands gentle on her face, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was clearly for show but sent an unexpected jolt through her system. It was brief, appropriate, and completely devoid of emotion. Exactly what she had expected, and yet somehow disappointing. The reception was an elaborate affair that felt more like a business networking event than a wedding celebration. Valentina smiled until her face hurt, accepted congratulations from people she'd never met, and danced with her new husband in front of cameras that captured every moment for posterity. You're doing well, Damian murmured, as they swayed to the music, his hand firm on her waist. Very convincing. Shh. I'm a quick study, she replied, looking up into those ice-blue eyes that revealed nothing. Good, he said. We'll need to maintain this facade for the next 5 years. That night, in the penthouse that was now her home, Valentina stood in the master bedroom that felt more like a hotel suite than a place where people lived and loved. Damian had shown her to her own space down the hall, a beautiful suite with its own sitting area and bathroom, but, for some reason, she found herself lingering in the doorway of his room. Having second thoughts? Damian asked. He had loosened his tie but was still fully dressed, standing by the window with a whiskey in his hand. No, Valentina said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Just ... This is really happening, isn't it? It's a contract, Valentina, he said, using her first name for the first time. Nothing more, nothing less. 5 years from now, we'll both be exactly where we want to be. She nodded, though something in her chest tightened at his words. Good night, Damian. Good night, Mrs. Blackwood. As she closed the door to her own suite, Valentina caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Mrs. Blackwood. For the next 5 years, that's who she would be. The question was, who would she be when it was all over? Cracks in the ice 2 months into their marriage, Valentina had established a routine that kept her sane in the gilded cage that was Damian's penthouse. She woke at 7, worked out in his state-of-the-art gym, then spent her mornings volunteering. At a local literacy center, afternoons were reserved for helping her father navigate the company's recovery, and evenings were usually spent alone since Damian rarely returned home before midnight. It was a cold, efficient arrangement that suited Them both perfectly or so, she told herself. The penthouse was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all clean lines and expensive materials, but it felt more like a museum than a home. Everything was perfectly placed, perfectly maintained, and perfectly soulless. Valentina had tried to add personal touches to her sweet photos of her family, books she loved, a plant she'd rescued from near death, but the rest of the space remained untouched by human warmth. Their interactions were polite but distant. They attended the necessary social functions together, presenting a united front to the world. Damian would place his hand on her lower back as they walked into galas, pull out her chair at dinner parties, and even dance with her when cameras were present. But the moment they were alone, the walls went back up. It should have been perfect. It was exactly what she had signed up for. So why did she find herself feeling so ... empty? The first crack in their carefully constructed facade came on a Tuesday evening in late spring. Valentina was in the kitchen, a rare occurrence since they usually ate separately. When she heard the front door slam with unusual force, she looked up from her book, surprised. Damian never slammed doors. He walked into the kitchen, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His tie was loosened, his hair mussed, and there was a tightness around his eyes that she'd never seen before. "Rough day?" she asked, setting down her book. Damian stopped short, as if he'd forgotten she lived there. "I didn't realize you were still awake. It's only 9 o'clock, she said, studying his face. "Are you okay?" For a moment she thought he might actually answer. His mouth opened, then closed, and something vulnerable flashed across his features before the mask slipped back into place. "I'm fine," he said curtly. "Just a long day." But he wasn't fine. Over the next week, Valentina noticed things that probably no one else would have picked up on. The way he gripped his coffee cup a little too tightly in the mornings. The dark circles under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. The way he sometimes stood at the window late at night, staring out at the city with an expression she couldn't read. She told herself it wasn't her business. Their contract was clear about boundaries, about not interfering in each other's personal lives. But despite her best efforts, she found herself caring. The breaking point came on a Saturday night. Valentina was in her suite, reading in bed, when she heard a crash from somewhere in the penthouse. She froze, listening. Another crash, followed by what sounded like glass breaking. Against her better judgment, she got up and padded down the hallway in her bare feet. The living room was dark, except for the city light streaming through the windows, but she could see Damian's silhouette near the bar. He was standing over the remnants of what had been a very expensive whiskey decanter, his shoulders shaking with what might have been rage or something else entirely. "Damian?" Called softly, he spun around, and in the dim light, she could see his face was a mask of anguish. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'll clean this up." "It's okay," she said, moving closer. "What happened?" "Nothing," he said quickly, but his hands were shaking as he began picking up the larger pieces of glass. "It's nothing. Just clumsy." "Stop," she said, kneeling beside him. "You're going to cut yourself." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something raw and broken in his eyes. "Why do you care?" The question caught her off guard. I don't know, I just do." For a long moment, they knelt there among the broken glass. Something shifting between them. Then Damian's carefully constructed walls crumbled entirely. "Today would have been my mother's birthday," he said quietly. "She died when I was 15. Cancer. I was supposed to visit her grave, but I got caught up in meetings, and ... I forgot. I forgot my own mother's birthday." Valentina felt her heart break a little for this man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. I'm sure she would understand. Would she? Damian's laugh was bitter. She used to say I was too much like my father. Cold. Calculating. Only cared about business. Maybe she was right. "I don't think you're cold," Valentina said softly. Looked at her with surprise. "You don't? Cold people don't punish themselves for forgetting important dates. Cold people don't stand at windows at midnight looking lost. Cold people don't shake when they're upset." Something in his expression shifted, and for the first time since she'd known him, Damian looked ... human. Vulnerable. Real. I miss her, he admitted. Every day. Was the only person who ever really knew me. Without thinking, Valentina reached out and touched his hand. Tell me about her. And to her surprise, he did. They sat there on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and spilled whiskey, and Damian told her about his mother. About how she used to make him chocolate chip cookies on Sundays. How she'd sing off-key in the car. How she'd taught him to dance in the kitchen while dinner was cooking. She sounds wonderful, Valentina said when he finished. She was, Damian said, his voice soft. She would have liked you, I think. I always said I needed someone who wasn't afraid to challenge me. Is that what I do? Challenge you? He looked at her with those ice-blue eyes that suddenly didn't seem so cold. From the moment you refused to sit down in my office. Something had shifted between them that night. They were still careful, still maintained their boundaries, but there was a new awareness, a new understanding. Damian began coming home earlier, often joining her for dinner. They started talking, really talking about everything and nothing. Books, movies, childhood memories, dreams they'd given up on. It was dangerous territory, and they both knew it. But neither of them seemed able to stop. The problem was, Valentina was beginning to realize that what she felt for Damian was no longer just tolerance or even friendship. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race, when he smiled at her over coffee in the morning, or when his hand brushed hers as he passed her a book. She was falling in love with her husband. And that was definitely not part of the contract. The breaking point, the charity gala, was supposed to be just another performance. Valentina had grown accustomed to these events over the past year, the careful choreography of appearing devoted while maintaining emotional distance. The practiced smiles and rehearsed conversations, but tonight felt different from the moment they stepped out of the car. Damian looked stunning in his black tuxedo, his platinum hair perfectly styled. But there was something in his eyes when he looked at her that made her breath catch. She had chosen a deep emerald dress that hugged her figure elegantly, and the way his gaze lingered on her made her skin tingle with awareness. You look beautiful, he said, as they walked up the red carpet, his hand warm on her lower back. Thank you, she replied, but something in his tone made her look at him more closely. This wasn't the detached compliment he usually gave for the cameras. This felt real. The evening progressed like any other, with Damian introducing her to business associates and potential clients. But Valentina found herself watching him more closely than usual. Noticing the way he commanded attention without trying, the way people gravitated toward his quiet confidence. When the dancing began, he led her onto the floor with a grace that still surprised her. They had danced dozens of times before, but tonight something was different. His hand on her waist felt possessive, his fingers intertwined with hers more intimately than necessary for show. Are you okay? She asked as they swayed to the music. You seem different tonight. Do I? Murmured, his voice closer too. Her ear than it needed to be. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending. Her heart skipped. Pretending what? Before he could answer, they were interrupted by a woman with sharp features and calculating eyes. Damian, darling, she purred, completely ignoring Valentina. I was hoping to speak with you about the Melbourne project. Damian's jaw tightened. Almost imperceptibly. Miranda, I'd like you to meet my wife, Valentina. Miranda's smile was razor-sharp. Of course. How lovely to meet you. I'm Miranda Vance, Damian's former business partner. The pause was deliberate, loaded with implication. Valentina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Former? Oh, we had such a close working relationship, Miranda continued, her eyes never leaving Damian's face. Very close. Was so surprised to hear about your sudden marriage. It seemed so. Unlike Damian to make such an impulsive decision. If you'll excuse us, Damian said firmly, his arm tightening around Valentina's waist. We were just leaving. But Miranda wasn't finished. I heard through the grapevine that this was quite the business arrangement. How modern of you both. Suppose love isn't always necessary for marriage, is it? The words hit Valentina like a physical blow. Ah! She felt the blood drain from her face as the reality of their situation and how others perceived it crashed. Over her, she was just a business arrangement. A convenient solution to Damian's respectability problem. "Excuse me," she managed, pulling away from Damian. "I need some air." Door. She fled toward the balcony, her heart pounding and her chest tight. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside her. "Valentina." Damian's voice came from behind her. She didn't turn around. "She's right, isn't she? This is all just business. I'm just another acquisition to you. That's not true, isn't it?" She spun to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Be honest with me, Damian. When you look at me, what do you see? A wife or a contract?" He stepped closer, his expression intense. "I see the woman who challenges me every day, the woman who makes me want to be better than I am, the woman who held me when I was broken and didn't ask for anything in return. But you don't love me," she said, her voice breaking. "And I can't keep pretending that I don't." She stopped herself, horrified by what she had almost admitted. "That you don't what?" he asked quietly. "Nothing," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me. Why?" she asked, looking up at him with desperate eyes. "Why would it matter to you?" For a moment he looked like he was going to say something, his mouth opening and closing as if he were struggling with words. Then his expression shuddered, and she saw him retreat behind his walls again. "Because you're my wife," he said finally, but the words felt hollow. Valentina felt something break inside her chest. "No," she said quietly. "I'm your contract. There's a difference." She pushed past him and walked back into the ballroom, her head held high despite the tears threatening to fall. She made it through the rest of the evening on autopilot, smiling and making conversation while her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The ride home was silent, the space between them and the back of the car feeling like an ocean. When they reached the penthouse, Valentina went straight to her suite without a word. She was sitting on her bed, still in her evening gown, when she heard a soft knock on her door. "Valentina?" Damian's voice was muffled through the wood. "Can we talk?" "I'm tired," she said, her voice hollow. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" There was a long pause. "I know you're upset about what Miranda said." "I'm not upset," she lied. "I'm just tired of pretending. So am I." Something in his tone made her look toward the door. "What do you mean?" I'm tired of pretending that this is just business. I'm tired of pretending that I don't think about you every moment of every day. I'm tired of pretending that I don't love you." Valentina's heart stopped. She stared at the door, certain she had misheard him. "What did you say?" "I love you," he said, his voice stronger now. "I've been in love with you for months, maybe since that night with the broken glass. I tried to convince myself it was just the arrangement, just proximity, but I can't lie anymore. Not to you, not to myself." She stood up on shaky legs and walked to the door, her hand hovering over the handle. "Damian, ... double quotes. I know this complicates things," he said. "I know it's not what we agreed to. But I can't pretend anymore, Valentina. I can't keep acting like you're just a business partner when you're everything to me." With trembling fingers, she turned the handle and opened the door. Damian stood in the hallway, his bow tie undone, his hair mussed, his eyes full of raw emotion. "Say something," he pleaded. "Please." "I love you too," she whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I've been falling in love with you for months, and I thought I was going crazy because it wasn't supposed to happen. Though we weren't supposed to feel anything." He reached for her then, his hands cupping her face gently.
"Oh, but we do."
"But we do." She agreed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to be a real husband. I don't know how to love someone without destroying it." "Neither do I," she said, covering his hands with hers. "But maybe we can figure it out together." He leaned down and kissed her then, and this time it wasn't for show or for cameras. It was real and desperate and full of all the feelings they had been denying for so long. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damian rested his forehead against hers. "What happens now?" "Oh," he asked. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I want to find out." Love conquers all. The morning after their confession, Valentina woke up in Damian's arms for the first time. It spent the night talking, kissing, and slowly tearing down the walls they had built around their hearts. Now in the soft light of dawn, she watched him sleep and marveled at how different he looked, peaceful, younger, vulnerable. "Good morning," he murmured, his eyes still closed but his arms tightening around her. "Good morning," she replied, pressing a kiss to his chest. "How long have you been awake?" "A while," he admitted, opening his eyes to look at her. "I was afraid that if I moved you might disappear, that this might all be a dream." "It's not a dream," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "Doubt it. It's complicated," he sighed, his thumb tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. The contract, she agreed. "We have 3 years left. What if we didn't?" he asked suddenly. "What if we tore it up?" Valentina propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "What do you mean? What if we started over? What if we got divorced, officially ended the contract, and then got married again? For real this time?"
For love.
The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "Are you sure?" "No." "You'd be giving up your business advantage? The respectability factor?" "I don't need respectability if I don't have you," he said, his voice fierce. "I'd rather have you choose me freely than keep you bound by a contract." Valentina felt tears prick her eyes. "And what about Cross Technologies? The financial backing?" "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "Your father is a smart man, and the company has been recovering well. We'll find another way." "Damian," she started, but he cut her off with a gentle kiss. "I want to marry you because I love you," he said against her lips, "not because of some business arrangement. I want to wake up every morning knowing that you're here because you want to be, not because you have to be." 3 months later, they stood in the same courthouse where they had signed their divorce papers just weeks before. But this time, everything was different. Valentina wore a simple white dress that she had chosen herself, and Damian looked at her like she was his entire world. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, as they waited for the judge, their hands intertwined. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," she replied, squeezing his fingers. The ceremony was simple, with only Richard, James, who had flown in from London, and a few close friends as witnesses. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Damian's kiss was soft and full of promise. "I love you, Mrs. Blackwood," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too, Mr. Blackwood," she replied, laughing through her tears. The reception was held at the penthouse, which no longer felt like a museum, but like a home. Valentina had spent weeks adding personal touches family. Photos, plants, books, and art that reflected both their personalities. The sterile perfection had been replaced with warmth and life. "I have something for you," Damian said during a quiet moment, pulling out a small velvet box. "Another ring?" she asked, looking down at the simple gold band he had placed on her. "Finger at the courthouse?" "Not exactly," he said, opening the box to reveal a key. "This is the key to a house I bought. Our house. I thought we could use a fresh start. Somewhere that's ours from the beginning." Valentina looked at the key, then at his nervous expression. "You bought us a house?" "I wanted to give you a home," he said simply. "A place where we can build our life together. Where we can have the family we've talked about. Where we can grow old together." Show me." The house was perfect. Beautiful Victorian, in a quiet neighborhood, with a wraparound porch and a garden that begged for attention. It was nothing like the sterile penthouse, full of character and possibilities. "The kitchen needs work," Damian said nervously as they walked through the rooms, "and the master bathroom is a bit dated." "We can renovate whatever you want. It's perfect," Valentina said, turning to face him. "It's absolutely perfect. Even the creaky floorboards?" "Especially the creaky floorboards," she said, pulling him close. "They'll warn us when the kids are trying to sneak out." "Kids?" he asked, his eyebrows rising. "Well, we'll need to fill all these bedrooms with something," she said teasingly. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. "I love you," he said, when he set her down. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Good," she said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Love should be a little scary. It means it matters." 2 years later, Valentina stood in the kitchen of their home, watching through the window as Damian played in the garden with their 6-month-old daughter, Emma. The little girl's giggles filled the air as her father made silly faces at her. and Valentina felt her heart swell with happiness. Cross Technologies had not only survived but thrived under the new partnership structure they had worked out. James had graduated with honors and joined the company as a junior engineer, bringing fresh ideas and enthusiasm. Richard had stepped back from day-to-day operations but remained as chairman, finally able to enjoy the fruits of his labor. "There's my beautiful wife," Damian said, coming into the kitchen with Emma in his arms. "And how are my two favorite girls today?" "Perfect," Valentina said, accepting his kiss and reaching for Emma. "Aren't we, sweetheart?" Emma babbled happily, reaching for her mother's hair with chubby fingers. "I got the call from the adoption agency today," Damian said, his voice carefully neutral. "They have a little boy. He's 2 years old." Valentina looked up sharply. They had been trying to adopt a sibling for Emma, wanting to give a child who needed a home the love they had to offer. "Really?" she asked, her voice breathless with hope. "Really?" he confirmed, his smile breaking free. "They want to meet with us next week." "Oh my God," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We're going to have a son." "We're going to have a son," he agreed, pulling both his girls into his arms. 5 years after their first wedding, 10 years after their second, Valentina sat on the porch of their home, watching their 3 children play in the garden. Emma, now 11, was teaching her younger brother Marcus how to plant flowers, while 3-year-old Sophie chased butterflies with the single-minded determination that only toddlers possessed. "Penny for your thoughts," Damian said, settling beside her on the porch swing with 2 cups of coffee. "Just thinking about how different my life is from what I expected," she said, accepting her cup and leaning into his side. 10 years ago, I thought I was sacrificing my happiness to save my family. I never imagined I'd end up with everything I never knew I wanted." "Regrets?" he asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Never," she said firmly. "Not even about the contract. Without it, we never would have found each other." "Maybe we would have," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe we were always meant to find each other." Maybe," she agreed, watching as Marcus proudly showed Emma the flower he had successfully planted. "But I'm glad we found each other the way we did. It taught us both that love isn't just about feeling, it's about choosing. Every day, we choose each other. And I'll keep choosing you," he said softly, "for the rest of my life, even when I'm old and gray and can't remember where I put my keys, especially then," he said, turning to face her, "because by then, I'll know exactly where you put them. I'll have been watching you lose them for decades." She laughed, the sound mixing with the children's giggles and the soft rustle of wind through the trees. "I love you, Damian Blackwood." "I love you too, Valentina Blackwood," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss that still made her heart race after all these years. As the sun set over their garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Valentina reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had started as a business arrangement had become the greatest love story of her life. She had learned that sometimes the most unexpected paths led to the most beautiful destinations. Their children's laughter filled the air as they chased fireflies in the growing dusk. And Valentina knew that this messy, wonderful, perfectly imperfect life was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. Love, she had discovered, wasn't just about passion or romance. It was about partnership, about choosing to build something beautiful together, about finding home in another person's heart. And in Damian's arms, surrounded by the family they had created together, she had found her forever home. Subscribe for more incredible HFY stories, romance tales, and dramatic narratives that celebrate human resilience and love.